Remembering everything sounds impossible, but it begins with simple habits. Richard Feynman showed that clear understanding makes memory stronger. Instant recall is not a trick. It starts when you stop trying to hold loose words and start building real understanding. When you truly grasp the meaning of an idea, your brain encodes it more deeply. You are not just repeating sounds. You are storing a structure. You notice this when an idea clicks and becomes easy to explain. Each time you revisit that clear idea, the memory trace grows stronger. You begin to recall it faster and with less effort. You see that recall is built, not given. Strong memory begins with clear understanding. Strong memory grows when you revisit ideas with understanding, not just with raw repetition. You can read the same page many times and still forget it. But when you understand the idea and then revisit it after a break, it becomes easier to recall. This fits what we call spaced repetition. You learn something, step away, and then return to it later. When you come back, your brain must rebuild the idea from partial memory. This effort strengthens the memory. You are not just seeing the words again, you are recreating the meaning. Each cycle makes the idea more stable. You begin to see that timing matters. Review too soon, and it feels like nothing was lost. Review after a gap, and the mind has to work. That work is what makes memory last. Revisiting ideas with understanding builds long-term memory. You remember ideas more easily when you can explain them in simple words. Feynman used this as a personal test. If he could not explain a concept in everyday language, he did not claim to fully understand it. When you take an idea and restate it in your own words, you move it from short-term memory into deeper storage. You are not copying, you are rebuilding. This act of rebuilding is a form of retrieval practice. You pull the idea out of your mind and shape it. You decide what is essential and what is extra. In doing this, you create a personal version of the idea that fits how you think. When you revisit that idea later, your simple explanation helps you recall it faster. You can rebuild the full concept from your own clear summary. Explaining ideas simply strengthens recall. Memory becomes stronger when ideas are linked, not isolated. Feynman often built mental models where concepts connected to each other. He did not treat each fact as separate. He treated each one as part of a larger picture. When you do this, you create associations in your mind. One idea leads to another. You can practice this by asking how a new idea connects to something you already know. You might compare it, contrast it, or place it in a simple structure. Your brain forms links that make recall easier. Later, when you remember one part of the model, related parts come with it. You are not searching for a single loose fact. You are recalling a whole pattern. This makes recall faster, deeper, and more stable. Connected ideas are easier to recall. You remember meaning longer than you remember exact words. Real knowledge has structure. It is not just a string of terms. When you focus on meaning, you try to see what an idea actually does, how it works, and why it matters. You build a simple mental model instead of clinging to a sentence. Memory for meaning lets you explain something in many ways. You can change the words and still keep the idea. This is much stronger than rote memorization, where you forget as soon as the exact wording fades. You notice the difference when you can apply an idea in a new context. That shows you have the structure, not just the phrase. Meaning gives your mind more hooks to hold on to. Meaning creates stronger memory than rote memorization. Strong recall is built when you ask your mind to remember without help. You may feel safe when you keep looking at notes, books, or screens, but rereading is a passive act. The brain does not have to retrieve anything. It only has to recognize. Feynman preferred to check his understanding by seeing what he could produce on his own. Active recall means you close the page and try to bring the idea back from memory. You might write it out, say it aloud, or sketch a simple diagram. At first, this feels harder than rereading. That effort is useful. It is the moment when your brain strengthens the memory. When you notice gaps, you go back, repair them, and then test again. Over time, this cycle makes recall fast and reliable. You begin to trust that you can bring the idea back, even when you are away from notes. Active recall strengthens memory more than passive review. Lasting memory depends on clear understanding. So confusion must be handled early. You may feel a small sense of blur when you study something. A step in a process feels fuzzy. A definition feels half-known. It is easy to ignore this and move on. Feynman did the opposite. He treated confusion as a signal to stop and look closer. When you spot a gap, you can mark it and return to it. You ask what part does not make sense, then seek a clearer explanation. You may need to break the idea into smaller pieces or use simpler words. Once the gap is closed, your mental picture becomes smoother. Watching your own thinking in this way keeps you from building memory on weak ground. You store clean concepts instead of broken ones. This makes later recall much more accurate and stable. Removing confusion supports accurate and lasting memory. Ideas become easier to remember when you connect them to real examples. Feynman often checked abstract concepts against concrete cases. He wanted to see how an idea behaved in a simple, clear situation. When you do this, you give your brain a story-like structure to hang the idea on, without adding drama. You create a clear case that shows the idea in action. You can ask yourself how the concept would show up in daily life, in a basic problem, or in a simple number example. Once you find a good example, you use it again when you revisit the idea. Each time, the link between the idea and the example grows stronger. Later, you may recall the example first. From that example, the general idea returns. The example acts as a bridge to the concept. This makes recall faster and more reliable. Practical examples reinforce strong memory. Memory improves when learning is spread out instead of compressed. You can cram many facts in one long session, but most of them will fade quickly. You remember better when you review material over several days or weeks. Returning to key ideas again and again fits this pattern. You do not treat a topic as finished after one pass. You can use spacing by planning short review sessions at increasing intervals. You study an idea today, then revisit it tomorrow, then a few days later, then a week later, and so on. Each revisit is shorter but focused. You quickly test what you remember, fill gaps, and move on. This pattern tells your brain that the idea matters over time. The brain responds by moving it into more stable storage. You begin to recall it even after long breaks. Spaced learning creates long-term recall. Instant recall feels easier when review is part of your normal routine. Instead of reviewing only when you feel lost, you set up a simple system. You may have a list of key ideas you want to remember. Each day or each week, you spend a small, fixed amount of time revisiting a few of them. The goal is not long sessions. The goal is regular contact. Important concepts stay in play. When a behavior has a clear trigger and a small, repeated action, it becomes automatic. Regular review can become one of these habits. As you follow this routine, memory begins to feel less fragile. You are not trying to lock in everything in one go. You are calmly touching the ideas again and again. This creates a steady, low-pressure path to instant recall. Regular review strengthens memory as a habit. Memory gains real value when you use it to solve problems. Feynman did not collect facts for their own sake. He used his recall to test ideas, derive results, and check his work. When you apply what you remember to real tasks, you give your brain a strong reason to keep that knowledge ready. The information is not just stored, it is used. You can practice this by taking ideas you have studied and using them in simple exercises, projects, or decisions. Each time you pull an idea from memory and put it to work, you strengthen both the idea and the path to it. You are telling your brain that this knowledge matters in real life. Over time, you begin to recall key ideas almost on demand. They come to mind faster because they have a history of use, not just a history of study. Using memory in real work improves recall. Strong memory is not separate from strong thinking. It grows out of it. Feynman's way of learning joined both. He focused on meaning, simple language, repeated review, and real use. He did not chase tricks. He built understanding and then revisited it. When you follow the same path, instant recall becomes a natural result, not a special act. You give attention to what ideas mean, not just how they are worded. You explain them in your own words. Test yourself without notes. Fix confusion early and apply what you know. You revisit important ideas over time instead of leaving them behind. With this approach, recall stops feeling like a fight. It becomes a side effect of clear, honest thinking and steady practice. Clear understanding and regular review build strong memory.